Hey y'all, welcome to Killer Queens, a true crime podcast. I'm your host Torella, and like most millennials, I've always had an obsession with true crime. On KQ, you'll find light true crime stories, millennial hypes and gripes, some adult language, and maybe a special guest here and there. Just like a 90s sleepover, we're just a couple BFFs hanging out, so gather round and let's launch right into it. This episode contains discussion of missing person, mentions of suicide, and human trafficking. Listener discretion is advised. In August of 2013, 25-year-old Tiffany Daniels had asked her boss if she could leave work early and was planning to take a few days off after that. It wasn't until days later when people realized that nobody had seen or heard from her since then. Her car was later located, parked at a nearby beach, but what happened to Tiffany remains a mystery to family, friends, and law enforcement in the Pensacola, Florida area. And want to give a hey girl thanks to Jessica Patrick for requesting this case, and a hey girl thanks to Mark for writing it up. Let's get started. Tiffany Daniels, a vibrant and talented individual, was born and raised in the Dallas area, and from an early age, she displayed a passion for art and an outgoing, engaging personality that left a lasting impression on everyone she met. Her family describes her as free-spirited, a trait that allowed her to easily connect with people and also brighten the atmosphere wherever she went. Her love for the arts flourished in high school, where she excelled creatively and socially, and then later, she turned her artistic skills into a career, taking a position at the Pensacola State College Theater in Pensacola, Florida, where she painted elaborate sets for theatrical productions. This role combined her artistic talents with her love for community and culture, allowing her to make meaningful contributions to the local art scene in Pensacola. Now, outside of work, Tiffany immersed herself in Pensacola's rich cultural and natural offerings. Downtown, near her job, she became an active member of the local blues and swing dancing community, and she would often organize and attend very lively dance events. And she would even organize dances at her house, which people in the community all looked forward to and showed up for. So they would just like push aside all the furniture in the living room and they would just get to dancing. How fun is that? I remember at my high school, there was a swing dance club and it looked so fun. I know some of the kids that were in it and I was just like, that is amazing. But if you saw me dance, I mean, I didn't drink yet in high school, but drinking is the only way I can dance. It's horrific. Legitimately, it's horrific. But I wish I could have been one of those swing dance kids, you know? These parties just sounded so fun. Like people would just come over and they'd move everything out of the way and they would just like swing. Like, think about swing dancing, how fun it looks. That sounds so fun. She also was super outdoorsy. She would absolutely take advantage of her home's proximity to the Bob Sykes Bridge in Santa Rosa Island. And there she could frequently be found hiking or biking in the scenic coastal dunes. And the bike situation is going to come into play a little bit later. Tiffany lived with intention as well. She adorned her feet with tattoos of a plant's stages of growth and blooming, which symbolized how life starts when you go through stages and changes throughout before you become your true self. So it was like these seeds that were blossoming into plants and they looked like they were kind of like climbing up her feet. It was really cool. I have a tattoo of a leaf changing colors on my foot, which I got from My Chemical Romance. Yeah. Tiffany's came from like her heart and her mind, and mine came from My Chemical Romance. It's a great song though. It's not a fashion statement. It's a fucking death wish. And the bridge, which is always my favorite part of every song. I think that's why me and T Swift get along so well, because she's like the bridge queen. Anyway, in the bridge of the song, he says, oh my God, this is going to be like a poetry reading. He says, this hole you put me in wasn't deep enough and I'm climbing out right now. You're running out of places to hide from me. When you go, just know that I will remember you. If living was the hardest part, we'll then one day be together. and in the end will fall apart just like the leaves change in colors. And then I will be with you. I will be there one last time now. When you go, just know that I will remember you. I lost my fear of falling. I'll be with you. I will be with you. And then snapping because poetry, but, just like the leaves changing colors, you see? However, life for Tiffany was not without its challenges. Despite her seemingly fulfilling lifestyle, Tiffany did face some financial difficulties. Her kind-hearted and generous nature sometimes left her vulnerable, particularly in her relationships with housemates. And also, guys, she's 25. Like, everybody who's 25, I don't know, everybody that I know that's 25, including when I was 25, had financial hardships, right? Like, that's just not the time in your life when you're like, wow, I have way more money than I thought I would have right now. I feel like when I was 25, that's when I was like, am I going to drink alcohol tonight or am I going to put gas in my car? I'm absolutely drinking alcohol tonight. Like it's about balance. But she would particularly have some issues with her housemates. So her parents said that they kind of noticed a recurring pattern of Tiffany being the one to shoulder the rent for the people who were sharing the house with her, and they either would not or could not pay their share. So by the summer of 2013, the cycle had taken a toll on her finances. And it seemed like one after another, somebody would move in. Then they would start being short on the rent or utilities. So then Tiffany would end up covering it. Like, okay, I will go ahead and pay the landlord. You pay me back when you get it. And then they would leave. They would not pay it back. Oh, I don't have it yet. And the cycle would continue, and then she'd have to look for somebody new, and it would keep going. So it definitely seemed like there were a lot of people that noticed how kind and generous she was and took advantage of that because they're fucking assholes. In July of that year, following the departure of yet another housemate, Tiffany turned to Craigslist to find a new roommate. And among the responses was one from Gary Nichols, who happened to be the 54-year-old father of a friend, Noelle. Nichols, who was going through a separation and needed to live closer to his job, moved in shortly afterward. And while Tiffany's parents were initially uneasy about their daughter living with a man more than twice her age, they recognized, okay, this is pretty practical, right? Gary Nichols was financially responsible. He shared similar interests with Tiffany, including cycling, and he was also a pescatarian. Gary moving in really helped ease the financial burden that Tiffany was struggling with. I mean, he paid his bills and he paid them on time, and he wasn't trying to take advantage of her. And he was kind of like a father figure. I mean, in a way, like she was close with her father, but in the sense that like he kind of kicks into dad mode when he doesn't hear from her. And initially, Tiffany's parents were kind of like, I don't know, we don't want you to feel like you're living like with a parent or whatever, but it seemed to work out pretty well. Unfortunately, it didn't last very long. On the evening of August 11th, 2013, Tiffany and Gary watched a movie at home together. And at work, they were beginning a production of Spamalot. So Tiffany and Gary had watched Monty Python and the Holy Grail that evening. And Spamalot is a stage musical based on Monty Python and the Holy Grail. So it made sense. Gary says that around 5 a.m. the next morning, he was woken up by the sound of their front door opening and closing several times. But when he looked out his door, he didn't see Tiffany, and he also didn't see anybody else. And then when he went to leave for work around 7 a.m., he did not see Tiffany's car, which was a silver/gray 1999 Toyota 4Runner. This was definitely odd for Tiffany. Her own family says she was not an early riser, and if she had to be at work at 7, she wasn't going to leave her house till 6:55 at the fucking earliest. She might be leaving at 7. A woman after my own heart. I don't know if she would plan to stop at Starbucks on the way in, but I'm definitely that meme that's like when you're late for work and you're still trying to stop at Starbucks, but like it's already 8:05 and you're supposed to be there at 8 o'clock, and you're like coming in hot. Like you're trying to get to work at 8 o'clock. You see what I'm saying? You have to go backwards in time. You see what I'm saying? I messed it up, but that's me. Tiffany was not trying to get up earlier than she absolutely had to. I feel you. At work that day, Tiffany had asked her boss at the college if she could take off a little bit earlier than normal because she had some stuff she needed to take care of. And she also told her supervisor she was going to take a few days off, possibly up to a week. And she did not tell anyone why she had taken the days off. People at work kind of figured, she's kind of a leaf in the wind. She's a free spirit, she's just gonna go off camping by herself or something, like whatever. But Tiffany also did not tell any friends or family that she was taking any time off. And she also didn't tell them why she would be taking time off. So, that's kind of odd, right? And I don't know. Her family didn't say she absolutely would have told us if she was going to be taking off, or she absolutely would have told us if she was going to leave for a few days. But they make it seem like this was odd. And they make a point to say she didn't tell us that she was leaving or where she was going or that she wouldn't be at work for a few days. So it does seem like maybe that wasn't normal for her. So after clocking out, it's believed that Tiffany did go back home. Gary was there at the time, but he did not see her or hear her. He was on the phone with his girlfriend who lived out of state. And the reason that investigators believe that she was home is because of the search history on her computer, which was used between 5 and 7 p.m. Some are skeptical as to how or why Gary did not see her, given the open nature of the floor plan in the house that they shared. But investigators would later say that they don't think Gary was involved in any wrongdoing when it comes to Tiffany's disappearance. So really, the last time she was seen was by her boss when she told him she was going to leave early and then take those few days off. Later in the evening, Gary called his daughter Noelle, who was one of Tiffany's friends, and he said, "Hey, listen, Tiffany hasn't come back home yet tonight. I'm honestly getting kind of worried." And his daughter was like, "Okay, Dad, don't be a dad. All right. She's a grown-up. She's 25. If she's out and she doesn't want to come home right after work or whatever, or by whatever time you think she should be home, that's fine. Like, don't be a dad right now. You're a roommate, okay? She's a grown-up. She'll come home when she wants to. And maybe she just doesn't want to hang out with a middle-aged man all the time. Maybe she has other people she wants to hang out with." And Gary was like, "All right, you're right. I will relax. I'm probably overreacting." The next day, Gary still could not get a hold of Tiffany, though. And when he came home from work that afternoon, the power to their house had been shut off. And he assumed that Tiffany just had not paid the bill. Now, Mark makes a note that the time frame here is a little sketchy. Some sources suggest that this was like within a 2-day span. Many others say that it was Saturday before his daughter later contacted Tiffany's mother. So there are some discrepancies. You might see different times noted in different articles and things like that. But pretty quickly after she leaves, the power is cut off. So Gary calls Noelle again, and he's like, "Okay, now I feel like something's wrong. The power has been shut off. Maybe you should try to get in contact with her family if you haven't heard from her either." So Noelle calls Tiffany's mom, Cindy, and Cindy initially was not worried. Tiffany was young. She was probably just out having a good time with her friends. She'd be back soon. So Cindy calls Tiffany. She leaves her a voicemail and says, "Hey, it's Mom. Just give me a call back. Let me know you're okay." And she was like, "I figured when she got the message, she would call me back and we could all be like, okay, she's fine, whatever." But Cindy did not get a response. So she and Noelle started to go through a list of Tiffany's friends, and they started calling and messaging them. And they noticed a pattern that they would call and the person would say, "Oh, I thought that she was with so-and-so, check with them, she's probably with them." And then they would check with so-and-so, and so-and-so would be like, "Well, I thought she was with, XYZ." And XYZ would be like, "Well, I thought she was with so-and-so." And it always was in this loop where they're like, "Okay, we've already talked to that person now. She's not with anybody that we know. She's not with anybody that we would think she'd be with." So Cindy starts getting really worried. And then once she, makes all these phone calls, talks to everybody, and I think gets in contact with Tiffany's job, she realizes it's been a full 5 days since anyone has seen or heard from Tiffany. And now she's fucking panicked. So she calls the Escambia County Sheriff's Office. They send deputies over to her house. So they went over, what's going on. Who have you and Noelle contacted? Are you sure you checked with everybody? All that stuff. Cindy says the officers were skeptical because, they told her the same thing that everybody tells everybody. She's a grown-up and she can disappear off the face of the earth if she wants to. Cindy's response was, you filed that fucking report. I don't give a shit what you say. I know my daughter. File the fucking report. Since Tiffany lived within city limits, the case was then passed to the Pensacola Police Department because remember, Cindy was the one that called, but Tiffany is the one that's missing. So now we've got this jurisdiction shit that we've got to go back and forth about. The detective in charge said that when they got a missing persons case, they investigated as if there has been a crime that led to the person going missing. So they look for the worst, they hope for the best. That way they don't miss any evidence as they're looking through. Love it. Love everything about you, Detective Harnett. I almost said Hartnett, like Josh Hartnett. God. Geriatric millennial much. Detective Harnett, thank you for doing your job. So he goes to Tiffany's house. Cindy met him there and they had her stay outside. They went in and they cleared the house. And inside they found no evidence of foul play. They did find her tent in the house because some people are like, oh, maybe she went camping, something like that. Well, they found her tent and all her camping supplies at the house. No. They found no evidence that she'd packed anything up with the intention of leaving. All her stuff was still there that you would think that she would have taken with her. So they put a bolo on her 4Runner and told the media about the missing young woman. So the next step to take is to look at the people in her life, right? The ones that she interacts with the most frequently. And they learned that Tiffany had a boyfriend who had left town right before she went missing, like the day before she went missing. Detective Harnett contacted her boyfriend. His name was Gray Thomas. So Tiffany and Gray met in 2012 and they had a strong connection instantly. He was a smart guy who worked with robotics. They both loved to dance. Cindy, Tiffany's mom, says they were just cute as a button together and they thought that he might be the one. But about a year into their relationship, Gray got into graduate school at the University of Texas to study robotics. And he asked Tiffany to come with him. And she didn't want to leave the life that she'd built for herself in Pensacola. So they agreed to try to stay together despite the long distance. And once Gray was settled in Austin, she was going to go visit him. So they definitely seemed to have future plans together. On the morning of August 11th, the day before she disappeared, Tiffany put together a farewell basket for Gray with some friends. And after they ate, Gray left for Austin. Gray says that Tiffany seemed down and sullen that day, but on the same hand, she was excited about the possibility of visiting Austin and meeting new people there and experiencing the arts community there as well. Tiffany's father, Rodney, had contacted Gray the moment that he learned that she was missing. Foul play was not in his mind. He thought that she just jumped in her car and drove to Austin without telling anybody. I'll call Gray. She'll be with him. Bingo bongo. Maybe her phone went dead, whatever, Gray said that when he got to Austin, he had spoken with Tiffany on the phone, but he had not talked to her the day she went missing or since then. Which, did he know? Well, I mean, I don't think he had anything to do with anything, but if you hadn't talked to her in that many days, would you reach out to other people and be like, hey, have you talked to her? I don't know. Initially, investigators think it was possible that Gray came back to Pensacola and did something to Tiffany. So they asked Gray to go to a local law enforcement agency and provide DNA and fingerprints. He was completely cooperative. He did everything that they asked for him to do. And they confirmed via cell phone records that when Tiffany went missing in Pensacola, Gray was hundreds of miles away in Austin. Everything they found on him points to him not having anything to do with her disappearance. With Tiffany going missing right around the time that Gray left, Detective Harnett's next thought was, okay, was her mental state maybe not the best, right? He had just left. Could things have shifted to where she thought this is the beginning of the end and I'm going to take my own life? Friends and family said that in the weeks and months leading up to this, Tiffany had not been her normal happy-go-lucky self and she did seem kind of down. But suicide was brought up to friends and family and they all shut it down instantly, saying that just wasn't who Tiffany was. She cared too much about the people in her life to put them through that. We all know, though, that is not always the case. That doesn't, just because a person contemplates or follows through with a suicide does not mean that they don't love the people around them. In fact, it is usually the opposite. It's something that you see time and time again, somebody doing when they feel that it is going to make the lives of the people around them better and not worse because of how low they've gotten in their own, in their own view of themselves. And it's so incredibly sad. And I will be the first to admit that when I was younger and, you hear stuff from your parents and you hear stuff from whatever, and I believed for a time that suicide was something that you did that was selfish. And when you know better, you do better. And I just cannot imagine feeling like the people who love you would be better off without you. But I can wholeheartedly and unequivocally say that just because you know somebody and you're like, they wouldn't do that to us, I think you're thinking about it the wrong way. I don't know if she did or she didn't. I'm not saying one way or the other or that I believe anything. I'm just saying as a whole, that mentality, I understand why a family would be like, no, that just wasn't in her character, or she just wouldn't do that. She wouldn't leave us like this, but that's not what that means. That's not what that means, They did feel like, though, that she would not have left without someone forcing her to. She was spontaneous. She was a free spirit, but they did not believe that she would leave this long without letting someone know. And she did have plans to host another dance at her house, and she was looking forward to productions at work. She had art she was working on. Nothing tracked as far as her just like up and leaving one day, or they believed taking her own life. Again, we can't know what is happening inside someone's mind. What I do pay attention to here is, does she have a tendency to maybe go off for 4 or 5 days and then show back up? There are some people who will quote unquote disappear for months. And then you're like, we've covered cases where there are family members who say, he or she would, they would go kind of do their own thing. They'd take off. They'd go travel around, they'd go do this, that, or whatever. But I knew when I didn't hear from them on my birthday, something was wrong. I knew when I didn't hear from them at Christmas, something was wrong. Like, people do have patterns that they follow. Tiffany did not have a pattern, according to her family and friends, where she would just sort of disappear for a few days to a couple weeks, not tell anybody where she was, but she always showed back up. She did not live that type of a lifestyle. She had a full-time job. She didn't have the type of lifestyle where she could do that, right? That I put a lot more stock into. At this point, though, they have no real leads or clues about where Tiffany could be, and her friends and family designed and gave out flyers to everyone that they saw. On August 20th, 9 days after Tiffany was last seen, her 4Runner was found parked in the lot outside the entrance to Fort Pickens on Pensacola Beach. A jogger had spotted the car and actually knew Tiffany's family, so she called them directly. So the police were notified as well, and the family goes out to the beach. And Cindy confirmed, yes, this is Tiffany's car, and an officer told the family, do not touch it. Don't touch it, don't touch it, don't touch it. Like from Arrested Development. But Cindy did look inside, and she saw some clothes, a jug of water, a jar of peanut butter, Tiffany's purse, her tablet, her wallet, and her bike was in the back. So they towed the car to the police impound for inspection. They found 2 fingerprints that they could not account for, one on the door handle and one on the steering wheel. These prints were not found in any database when they ran them either. The next step was to try to nail down when the vehicle made it to the parking lot. So they looked at toll records and drivers must go through to get to Santa Rosa Island where the car was found. And so they learned that Tiffany's car was found to have gone through the toll at 7:51 p.m. on August 12th, about 3 hours after she left for work. Now, there's no camera footage or anything like that, so we don't know who was driving, just that the car passed through the toll. And we also don't know, was another car traveling with it that was carrying somebody who then drove away in a different car? We don't know any of that. They asked some people who were in the area if they noticed the car there all week, but given that it was a transient-esque kind of vacation area, people are here just for a couple days or whatever, nobody could really say with certainty how long it had been there. They're like, oh, well, I just got here yesterday, or, I left the day after or whatever. The day after the car was found, friends and family went and scoured condos that were near the beach and the parking lot, and they estimated that they handed out over 40,000 flyers in the area. One theory was that Tiffany had gone out for a bike ride and then for a swim, she became distressed and possibly drowned. There was sand on the bike, but no sand in her car, which is odd because the bike was found back in the car. And let me tell you something. We go to the beach every single year and we take typically my vehicle down there. Past couple of years, we take an Andrew's truck. But anyway, before that, we would always take my vehicle. Now, we did not bring bikes with us, but we have a cart that we bring down to the beach that like is specifically for the beach that, can go through the sand and whatever. And we can put all our kids' shit and all of their toys and all of their this and all of their that and all of the, if it was just Andrew and I would be able to go down with a fucking bag and a chair for each of us. But we have kids now, so we got to have the kitchen sink, right? We get as much of that sand off as we can when we bring it back up every time. We rinse, all of our sandals off when we get up to the walkway. You do as much as you can to not get the sand in there. And it feels like when you open the door to my car, by the end of that trip, sand is like pouring out of it. There is sand fucking everywhere. How in the world she did not have sand all in her car, or at least sand where the bike was? I'm very confused. Beach people, what are we doing wrong? Because I've never been able to get something like that to happen. That is definitely strange to me. And maybe she just didn't ride her bike when she got there, but maybe she never took the bike out of the car. But anyway, that just seems interesting. There had been a oh my God. There had been a meteor shower that night, so some people thought that she'd gone to the beach to clear her mind and watch it. This was not out of the realm of possibility for her that she would go swimming at night. She would do stuff like that. She would go out to the beach if she needed to clear her head. She'd go out by herself for a bike ride at night on the beach. That's what she did. She would go for a night swim. That shit is too cold for me. Tiffany was brave, but a riptide could have easily taken her. But they did say in most cases of drowning like that, the body comes back to shore because you don't typically get so far out that you're just swept out to sea. Like if a riptide takes you, something's going to wash back up. An item of your clothing, your body, something like that. The police had limited resources, but they tried to search the beach, which stretches over 50 miles. The Daniels family ended up contacting Class Kids, an organization that helps in searches for missing children. We covered the case of Polly Class on this podcast. So that is Polly's father. I believe his first name is Mark Class, who started this organization. So they organized a massive land and water search of the area on August 25th that included national park rangers, 2 other professional search agencies, and 250 plus community volunteers. They did a grid search of the beach and surrounding area and waters. They were looking for any sign of Tiffany dead or alive. They covered the entire area of the national park and beyond, 75 to 80 search areas. There were no items found that could be identified as belonging to Tiffany, though. Detectives told the family that at this point, they don't have a body. They don't have a part of a body. Let's look at this as a good thing. Let's look at this as a good sign. We've not found anything to indicate that she is no longer alive. So let's assume that she is alive and we are still looking for her alive. Again, the investigation goes back to square one, though, because they haven't found anything, right? So the family began to suspect that Tiffany may have been taken alive. Friends had set up a Facebook page for people to send tips or anything that they thought might help. They say it was almost a full-time job responding to messages there. One man says that he saw Tiffany a few days before at the convenience store that he worked at. He described her and some of her tattoos. So the police followed up on this tip and they pulled the security footage from that day. And they went through the entire day from beginning to end, security footage. And guess fucking what? The transaction the man claimed happened never took place. Tiffany never walked into that store. Tiffany never walked out of that store. It just simply did not happen. So he saw stuff from the news and decided to call and be like, oh yeah, I saw her. So she was definitely alive after she went missing. I hope you step on a Lego, sir. I hope you step on a Lego real fucking hard. So now the case is going cold. In January of 2014, a tip from a waitress in Louisiana came in, and she said she was sure that she had served Tiffany with 2 other women. One of them was younger like Tiffany, and then the other was an older Hispanic lady who was dressed nicer than the two girls, younger girls. They're still women, but that's how I'm differentiating here. The waitress said that the two younger women had their sweaters pulled down over their hands and they never looked up. It was just an odd encounter. She said the older lady did most of the talking for them, which was weird. She did say that something had stuck out to her when they ordered their food, because when who she believed was Tiffany ordered, she asked if the dish that she had ordered had fish broth or chicken broth in it. Now, this was weird because it was a fish-based soup that she had ordered. And so she specifically said, is this fish broth or chicken broth? And it jumped out at the waitress as like, well, it's a fish soup. So, I mean, I would assume fish, but I guess I'll go ask. So Tiffany's mom, Cindy, said, well, the reason that this is so interesting to me is because before she went missing, we had gone to a restaurant. And Tiffany is pescatarian. She does not eat chicken, beef, like the only quote meat she eats is fish. So they had gone to a restaurant. Tiffany had ordered something that should have been a fish-based meal. She gets her food and she takes a bite of it and she's like, this is chicken in this. Like there's something chicken in this. So they ask the waitress and the waitress is like, oh yeah, they ran out of fish broth at some point today. So they just started swapping it with chicken broth, which normally wouldn't be, I guess, that big of a deal. But because of Tiffany's dietary preferences, it was a big deal to her. And she tasted it immediately. Her mom said as soon as she put it in her mouth, she was like, this is not fish. There is something in here that is not fish. And she was right. So after that, that flagged her because it never occurred to her as a possibility that somebody might, if you order a fish-based soup, whatever it is, you're not expecting it to not be pescatarian, right? So now she knows that that's a possibility. So now she knows to ask. So Cindy was like, I really feel like that was Tiffany because that was so specific to something that had happened to her before and that flagged her to ask for those kinds of things after that. The waitress said that she ended up telling Tiffany, you look like that girl that's missing from Pensacola. And then she said the three women immediately got up and left the restaurant after she said that. When the tip came in, they reached out to the restaurant to see if they had security footage, but by this point, it had been taped over. Story of our fucking lives. The family then learned about a story from Panama City, about 2.5 hours away, about a woman who had been drugged and abducted by two men who told her they were taking her to New Orleans and they were going to force her into prostitution. Lovely. They began to research how trafficking networks work and feel very strongly that this fits in with what could have happened with Tiffany. She was very trusting. She was willing to help anyone she met. As they dug more and more into it, they learned that trafficking incidents along I-10 had been reported more and more, which runs right through Pensacola. The police do say they don't have any evidence that lends itself toward the trafficking theory. Definitely something to be considered. I also wonder, you always hear people going missing and then somebody being like, well, what if she, like I've heard this in the Maura Murray case so many times. Well, what if at the same time that she got in that car accident and she's out, in the cold, a serial killer happens upon her? And then you will hear so many people be like, and what are the fucking odds of that? Well, every single person that a serial killer has attacked has fucking happened upon a serial killer at the wrong place at the wrong fucking time, right? So it could have. And it makes me think of Sean Great. I don't remember what the fuck his name is. He was the guy from the 2020 that we did on our watch party on YouTube. Definitely check out the Killer Queens YouTube. We are doing lots of more videos there. But Nikita and I did one on a 2020 episode on this guy, Sean Great, called Meet the Other Me. And he was a serial killer. And that's exactly what he would do. He would come across women. One of the women that he killed, abducted and killed, was a woman who had a flat tire. He helped her change it. He asked her for a ride. She gives him a ride. He kills her. Something like that could have happened too. About 2 years from the anniversary of Tiffany's disappearance, another tip came in. Someone sent a Facebook message and said they could take them to Tiffany's body and a confession from the person who had killed her. The person who sent the message said her boyfriend was the person who had killed Tiffany. She says that she found pictures of Tiffany and his belongings and later found out that Tiffany was missing. So she told Cindy that her boyfriend ended up confessing to her and she had it on tape. And so Cindy was like, what will it take to get that from you? And she was told that they needed $3,000 upfront and then they would send the recording. So Cindy was like, I want proof before I send any money. So they sent MP3 clips for them to listen to. They listened to the audio. Then their other daughter went onto Google and searched for the wording that was used. And they found that the clips were taken from the confession of an officer in Panama City who had killed his girlfriend. So the investigators traced the IP address of the person who had sent the messages, which led back to Russia. And it was someone just trying to extort them for money. A sense of relief hit Cindy, though, because she said it meant that Tiffany could still be alive and still be out there. And Cindy says that at this point, they've exhausted every avenue they can think of. So they'll be receptive to pretty much any tip that comes in. But if it's something like that, you know, she was like, we can figure out the fakes in a heartbeat. Unfortunately, we have a lot of experience with it now because people are fucking assholes. In December of 2015, the Daniels family and the police disclosed that in the wake of coverage of the case's second anniversary 4 months earlier, a citizen had come forward and told the police that on the day that Tiffany's car was discovered, they had seen a man who appeared to be in his 30s wearing red shorts and no shirt opening up the car's tailgate. A report consistent with the two witnesses who said that they saw a man leave the car after it was parked there. The witness remembered this because the car had been parked unusually, facing oncoming traffic in an area reserved for wildlife. Tiffany Daniels remains missing to this day. Around the 10th anniversary of her disappearance, a mural depicting her and calling for attention to the case was put up in Pensacola. Cindy and Rodney have spent their time volunteering with class kids, trying to help other families that have gone through and are going through the same things that they have. Tiffany Heaven Daniels has been missing since August 12, 2013. If you can help bring her home, please report tips to the PPD at 850-435-1900. And that is it, you guys. Let me know what you think about it. There's a disappeared episode on this case as well. It's not I had not heard of this case before this. And it is just so sad. It is just so sad. I personally feel like she encountered somebody who she offered to help in some way. And they took advantage of that trust and did something to her. And then they dumped her car there. I don't think she took a bike ride that night because I don't see how you wouldn't have the sand all in it. I just don't. And then you hear that people saw a man leaving the car there. Like, it's just so sad. It's just so sad to be, you know, women can't go out at night. I still think we should institute a curfew for men. No men after dark. It would be wildly inconvenient and my husband wouldn't be able to like run any errands or anything. So I don't know. I got to think about that one. But I mean, what the fuck are we supposed to do? What the fuck are we supposed to do? Like, something's got to change, you know? But let me know what you guys think. And I'll catch you on the next one. Love you. Bye. If you like this episode, be sure to like this episode and follow the show so that you never miss out on new episodes. Get in on the conversation on Facebook and Instagram. You can find us at Killer Queens Pod, or you can join our Facebook discussion group at Killer Queens Podcast, where we discuss cases covered on the show and all things 90s. If you want to submit a case to be covered on the show, visit killerqueenspodcast.com/case submission and just complete the form. And if we cover the case, we'll give you a shout out on the show. Lilas.